My roommate just traded me to his brother for 3 months of housework, and somehow I was the last person in the apartment to find out. I stopped in the doorway with a grocery bag hanging from one hand, staring at Jake Bennett like I had finally discovered the exact limit of human stupidity. Jake sat on our couch with his feet on the coffee table, wearing the guilty smile he usually saved for explaining why my leftovers had mysteriously disappeared. Across from him stood his older brother, Cole, tall, dark-haired, and annoyingly calm in a charcoal jacket that probably cost more than our monthly rent. "Say that again," I said. Jake cleared his throat. "Okay, but hear me out first. That sentence has never improved my life." Cole lowered his coffee cup, and I caught the smallest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Great. He thought this was funny. Jake pointed at me like he was presenting evidence to a jury. "Cole needs someone at his place for 3 months. You need somewhere temporary while the landlord fixes this disaster. And I hate housework." I looked around our apartment. A plastic sheet covered half the ceiling after a plumbing leak upstairs. 2 buckets sat near the kitchen, and a contractor had informed us that morning that repairs could make the place miserable for weeks. I'm still waiting for the part where I become currency. I told Cole you're amazing at domestic stuff. Domestic stuff? Cooking, cleaning, plants. You alphabetized the spice rack. Because you put cinnamon next to garlic powder. Exactly. You care. Jake leaned forward, suddenly enthusiastic. So you stay at Cole's house for 3 months, and in exchange, Cole handles my share of the chores here when the apartment is usable again. Silence filled the room. I turned toward Cole. "And you agreed to this?" His gray eyes met mine without hesitation. No, Jake's smile vanished. "Technically, you said you'd consider it." "I said I'd consider letting Ethan stay with me," Cole replied. "I never agreed to acquire a human being in exchange for vacuuming." I almost laughed despite myself. Almost. "Thank you." "You're welcome. I'm still not going." "That's fine." His answer came so easily that it irritated me more than an argument would have. Cole picked up his keys from the table. "Jake made it sound like you needed a place. I have a spare room." That was the entire offer. "No cooking." "I can cook." "Laundry." "I'm 29. "Cleaning." Cole glanced toward Jake's abandoned pizza box. Unlike my brother, I recognize trash when I see it. Jake looked personally betrayed. I folded my arms. Cole wasn't behaving the way I expected. No smugness. No pressure. No strange conditions. Just an open door I was free to ignore. Then another drop of water fell from our ceiling and landed directly inside my grocery bag. I looked down. The carton of eggs stared back at me from beneath a splash of dirty ceiling water. Jake wisely said nothing. Cole reached the doorway and paused beside me. "For what it's worth, Ethan, I have a guest room, 2 bathrooms, and a roof that doesn't rain indoors." I narrowed my eyes. "How far is your place from downtown?" "About 12 minutes. My commute was 45. I hated that information immediately. Cole opened the door. "Think about it. And if I say yes?" He looked back at me, expression unreadable. 3 months. No trade, no debt, no obligations. You stay because you choose to stay. I should have said no. Instead, watching another drop fall from the ceiling, I heard myself ask the question that would change everything. When can I move in? 48 hours later, I stood in Cole Bennett's entryway with 2 suitcases, 1 cardboard box, and the uncomfortable feeling that I had accidentally wandered into somebody else's life. His house was nothing like the apartment Jake and I shared. It sat on a quiet street about 12 minutes from downtown, exactly as promised, with clean white siding, a small front porch, and enough silence around it to make me suspicious. Inside, everything was neat without looking staged. Warm wood floors, dark blue walls, framed photographs, actual plants that were somehow still alive. Cole took 1 suitcase before I could protest. "Guest room is upstairs." I followed him, already preparing myself for the awkward conversation about rules. I was staying in another man's house for 3 months. There had to be rules. Cole opened a door at the end of the hallway. The room had a queen-size bed, a desk beside the window, an empty dresser, and fresh towels folded neatly on a chair. A new phone charger sat beside the bed. I stared at it. "You bought that." Jake said yours barely works. That bothered me for reasons I could not explain. Jake also says cereal counts as dinner. I ignored that advice. Cole showed me the bathroom across the hall, then the kitchen downstairs. He pointed out where the coffee was, which cabinet held the glasses, and how to work the thermostat. That was it. Wait, I said. What are the rules? Cole looked confused. Do not burn the house down. Seriously. So was I. I folded my arms. Guests. Tell me if someone is staying overnight, so I do not accidentally scare them at 6 in the morning. Kitchen. Use it. Laundry. Downstairs. Food. If it has my name on it. It is probably something I packed for work. Everything else is fair game. I stared at him. You are terrible at being controlling. I will try harder. That almost made me smile. Almost. By my third day, the entire arrangement became even stranger because Cole apparently did not need me for anything. He made his own breakfast before work. He washed his dishes immediately afterward. He separated his laundry by color. He even wiped the kitchen counter after making coffee. On Thursday evening, I found him vacuuming the living room. I stood in the doorway holding a grocery bag. What exactly am I doing here? Cole switched off the vacuum. Living here, I assumed. Jake traded 3 months of my legendary domestic abilities, and you are ruining my market value. Should I leave dirty socks around to make you feel useful? Please do not. Then we have a problem. I laughed before I could stop myself. Cole smiled, and for one brief second, he looked completely different from the quiet, intimidating man I thought I knew. Then I noticed something on the kitchen counter. My favorite coffee. The expensive hazelnut blend I only bought when it was on sale. Did Jake tell you about that too? I asked. Cole glanced toward it. No, then how did you? No. He hesitated for half a second. You used to bring it to the apartment whenever I visited Jake. I looked at him. Cole had been inside our apartment maybe 6 times in the past year. I barely remembered what he drank. Somehow, he remembered what I did. You noticed? I noticed things. He turned the vacuum back on, ending the conversation. But that night, lying in the guest room he had prepared before I ever agreed to come, I found myself thinking about those 3 words much longer than I should have. By the end of my second week at Cole's house, I had developed a problem I was not prepared to admit. Living with him was dangerously easy. Our mornings settled into a routine without either of us planning it. Cole woke before 6, made coffee, and left for work by 7. I came downstairs around 6:30 and somehow always found my favorite mug beside the coffee maker. The first time, I assumed it was coincidence. By the 5th morning, I knew better. I started making breakfast on Saturdays, not because I owed him anything, but because Cole had once mentioned that his mother used to make blueberry pancakes when he was a kid. The first Saturday I tried, he walked into the kitchen, stopped, and stared at the skillet. What? I asked. Nothing. That is clearly a something face. I did not know I had a something face. You have several. Most of them look judgmental. He sat at the counter while I placed a plate in front of him. After one bite, he became suspiciously quiet. Bad? I asked. No. These are almost exactly like hers. Something softened in his expression, and suddenly making pancakes felt more intimate than it had any right to. Our grocery trips became another accidental tradition. Cole shopped with a list organized by aisle. I wandered around adding things we did not need. We are not buying 4 kinds of cookies, he told me one evening. This is America, Cole. Respect my freedom. You ate the last package in one night. That sounds like an accusation without witnesses. He put 2 packages back. I secretly added one again when he was not looking. At checkout, he discovered it, looked at me, and placed it on the conveyor belt without saying a word. I smiled all the way to the parking lot. The strangest part was how quickly his house began collecting evidence of me. My shoes appeared beside his by the door. My cereal took over half a kitchen shelf. My ridiculous yellow umbrella leaned against his plain black one. One cold evening, I grabbed a navy hoodie from the laundry room without checking whose it was. It hung loosely on me, the sleeves covering half my hands. Cole noticed immediately when I walked into the living room. That is mine. I looked down. I was wondering why it fit like a camping tent. You can keep it on. His voice was casual, but his eyes lingered for 1 second too long before returning to the television. I sat at the opposite end of the couch, suddenly very aware that I was wearing something that belonged to him. We watched an old comedy neither of us admitted to liking. Somewhere near the middle, exhaustion caught up with me. When I opened my eyes again, morning sunlight was spilling through the windows. A blanket covered me from my shoulders to my feet. Cole was in the kitchen, already dressed for work, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. You could have woken me, I said. You looked tired. I sat up, pulling the blanket closer. You covered me? The blanket did most of the work. There it was again, That dry humor that always appeared when he was trying not to make something important sound important. He placed my coffee on the table and headed toward the door. Have a good day, Ethan. You too. The door closed behind him. I looked around the quiet living room, at my umbrella by his, my cereal in his kitchen, his hoodie still around my shoulders, and my coffee waiting exactly the way I liked it. For the first time, the thought came without warning. I was not counting how many days remained until I could leave anymore. I was starting to measure my days by the sound of Cole's key turning in the front door when he came home. The first person who called Cole my boyfriend was a cashier at the neighborhood grocery store, and I nearly dropped a jar of pasta sauce on my foot. Your boyfriend already paid for the coffee, she said, pointing toward Cole, who was standing near the exit with 2 paper bags. I stared at her. He is not my boyfriend. She smiled like she had heard that sentence before. Sure, honey. Outside, Cole handed me one of the bags. Why do you look offended? She thinks we are dating. He glanced through the window at the cashier. Should I file a complaint? You are enjoying this. A little. After that, it kept happening. A neighbor asked how long we had been together. A barista called us a cute couple. Even the delivery driver handed our dinner to Cole and said, enjoy your date night. Every time, I corrected them. Every time, Cole looked mildly amused. Then his company announced a charity dinner downtown, and Cole came home one Friday evening looking unusually uncomfortable. I need a favor, he said. I lowered my book. This sounds dangerous. My boss expects everyone on the management team to attend tomorrow night. Still not dangerous. With a guest. I waited. Cole rubbed the back of his neck. Would you come with me? As your guest? Yes. Not your boyfriend. His expression remained calm, but the tips of his ears turned slightly red. You can wear a name tag explaining the situation if necessary. I laughed and agreed. The next evening, Cole drove us downtown to a hotel ballroom filled with polished tables, soft music, and people who somehow looked comfortable wearing expensive suits. I had borrowed a navy jacket from Jake, which was probably the nicest thing my roommate had ever done for me without creating a problem first. Cole looked at me when I came downstairs and went completely silent. What? I asked. Nothing. You have that face again. You look good, Ethan. The simple sincerity of it caught me off guard. You clean up pretty well yourself. At the dinner, Cole introduced me simply as Ethan. No explanation. No awkward label. Somehow that felt better. We spent most of the evening making quiet jokes about the tiny appetizers and guessing which executive would give the longest speech. Then a woman from Cole's office smiled at us and said, I finally get to meet the mysterious boyfriend. I opened my mouth to correct her, but before I could speak, someone passing behind me bumped my chair. Cole instinctively placed a steadying hand at my waist. You okay? He asked. Yes. The woman smiled wider. You two are adorable. Normally, I would have corrected her immediately. This time, I did not. Neither did Cole. His hand remained at my side as the conversation moved on, warm and reassuring through the fabric of my jacket. I told myself he was only being polite. I told myself we were surrounded by people who had already made assumptions, and correcting every stranger would be exhausting. But several minutes later, when the woman had moved away and nobody was paying attention to us anymore, Cole's hand was still there. I looked down at it, then up at him. His gray eyes met mine. For once, neither of us had a joke ready. Cole, I said quietly. His hand immediately dropped away. Sorry, I did not ask you to move it. The words escaped before I could stop them. Something changed in his expression, subtle but unmistakable. Around us, people laughed and glasses clinked and music drifted across the ballroom. But suddenly all I could hear was my own heartbeat. Cole leaned slightly closer, not touching me again, just close enough that his voice did not have to rise above the crowd. Then what are you asking me, Ethan? I had no answer, because for the first time since moving into his house, I was beginning to wonder if everyone else had noticed something between us before we had. The question followed me all the way home. Cole did not mention what had happened at the charity dinner, and somehow his silence made everything worse. He drove with both hands on the steering wheel while streetlights moved across his face, appearing and disappearing like thoughts he refused to share. I tried twice to start a conversation and abandoned both attempts before making a sound. When we finally reached the house, I escaped upstairs, changed into sweatpants, and told myself I was going to sleep. 10 minutes later, I was back downstairs because apparently my dignity had gone home with someone else. Cole stood in the kitchen with his tie loosened, pouring water into a glass. "Can I ask you something?" I said. He looked at me. "You usually do. Why do you never bring anyone home?" He paused. "That is what you came downstairs to ask." "I am curious." "You are nosy." "That too." Cole leaned against the counter. "I have dated women." His expression changed slightly. "Sometimes." That single word made my thoughts stumble. Sometimes. Sometimes. I stared at him. "Cole Bennett, are you deliberately trying to make this conversation difficult?" "I am answering your questions, like a witness under oath." That earned a quiet laugh, but I was too nervous to enjoy winning it. I took a breath. "You know I am gay, right?" The humor disappeared from his face. "Yes. And that does not bother you?" "Why would it?" "I do not know. Because I am living in your house. Because everyone apparently thinks we are dating. Because tonight you had your hand on me for about 5 minutes after there was any practical reason for it to be there." Cole looked down at his glass. "I am sorry if I made you uncomfortable." "That is the problem." His eyes lifted. "What is?" My heart started beating faster. "You did not." Silence settled between us. I could hear the refrigerator humming behind him and the faint ticking of the clock over the stove. Cole placed his glass on the counter. "Ethan, do not say my name like that." "Like what?" "Like you already know what I am trying to say." He took one slow step closer. "I think I do." Every sarcastic answer I had ever relied on disappeared. Cole stopped a comfortable distance away, giving me enough room to step back. "I did not." "I know exactly who you are, Ethan," he said quietly. There was nothing dramatic about the words, but they landed somewhere deep. "Then tell me what this is." His gaze held mine. For one impossible second, I thought he might finally answer the question neither of us had been brave enough to ask. I moved a little closer. Cole did too. The distance between us became almost nothing, and then he stopped. His expression shifted, warmth giving way to restraint. "We should not do this." I felt foolish instantly. "Right. That is not what I meant." "You do not have to explain." I stepped away before he could see how much those 4 words had affected me. "Ethan, wait." "It is fine." "It is not." "Cole, seriously. You were curious." I misunderstood. Nobody committed a crime. I forced a smile that felt painfully unnatural. "Good night." I went upstairs before he could answer. Behind my closed door, I stood completely still, embarrassed by how quickly hope could become humiliation. The worst part was that Cole had not rejected me cruelly. He had been careful, gentle even. Somehow that hurt more, because I had spent weeks mistaking kindness for something else. The next morning, my favorite mug was waiting beside the coffee maker exactly where it always was. Cole was already gone. Beside the mug was a small paper bag from the bakery near my office, holding the blueberry muffin I always ordered on Fridays. I stared at it for a long time. If Cole wanted distance, he had a strange way of showing it. And if he wanted me, I could not understand why he had been the one to step away. I decided the easiest way to stop wondering whether Cole wanted me was to give myself someone else to think about. His name was Ryan Parker, a graphic designer I met through a friend from work, and on paper he was exactly the kind of man I should have liked. He was funny, easy to talk to, and completely clear about being interested in me. When Ryan asked me to dinner the following Saturday, I said yes before I could overthink it. Cole was chopping vegetables when I came downstairs wearing my good jacket. He glanced up, then looked back at the cutting board. "Going somewhere." "Dinner." "With Jake." "A date." The knife stopped for half a second before continuing. "Okay." I waited for something else. Nothing came. "His name is Ryan. I hope you have a good time." That was all. No strange expression. No sarcastic comment. No sudden confession. I walked out feeling annoyed at Cole for behaving exactly like a reasonable adult. Ryan took me to a small Italian restaurant downtown. He told great stories, asked thoughtful questions, and never once checked his phone. I should have been having fun. Instead, when he asked what kind of coffee I liked, I thought about a mug waiting beside Cole's coffee maker every morning. When he complained that his roommate never cleaned the kitchen, I remembered Cole silently wiping down the counter after breakfast. When Ryan asked if I wanted dessert, I wondered whether Cole had eaten dinner alone. I hated myself a little for that. When I returned home shortly after 10, the downstairs lights were off except for the small lamp over the stove. A covered plate sat inside the refrigerator with a note taped to it. "Pasta. Heat for 2 minutes." I smiled before remembering I was supposed to be creating distance. Cole was reading in the living room. "How was your date?" he asked. "Good. Good." I waited. Again, nothing. That is all you have to say? He lowered his book. What would you like me to say? I do not know. Did he treat you well? Yes. Then I am glad. Somehow that answer hurt more than jealousy would have. Over the next 2 weeks, I saw Ryan 3 more times. Cole never complained. He never asked intrusive questions. He simply began removing himself from spaces that had once belonged to both of us. He stopped waiting to eat dinner with me. Our Saturday grocery trips disappeared because he started shopping early while I was still asleep. Movie nights became quiet evenings in separate rooms. My coffee still appeared every morning, but Cole was usually gone before I reached the kitchen. At first I thought he was punishing me. Then one Thursday evening, I found him working at the dining table and finally asked, "Are you avoiding me?" Cole closed his laptop. "I am giving you space. I never asked for space. You were seeing someone. So." He looked at me for a long moment. "So, I am trying to respect that." The answer knocked every defensive thought out of my head. He was not angry. He was not playing games. He was stepping back because he thought that was what I needed. "Ryan is not my boyfriend," I said. "Maybe he will be. Do you want him to be?" Cole's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "What I want should not decide who you date." There it was. Not jealousy. Not ownership. Choice. The same thing Cole had given me from the first night I entered his house. I looked around the room and realized nothing had physically changed. My shoes were still beside his. My cereal was still in the cabinet. His navy hoodie was still hanging over my chair. Yet the house no longer felt warm in the same way. Cole had not taken anything from me. He had simply stopped offering the small pieces of himself I had grown accustomed to receiving. That was when I finally understood the problem. I had gone looking for another man because I thought Cole did not want me. Instead, every date with Ryan had only taught me whose key I was still listening for at the end of the day. I ended things with Ryan the next afternoon, and because he was apparently determined to remain a decent human being, he only smiled sadly and said, "I figured there was somebody else." I denied it automatically, then spent the entire drive home realizing I had no idea what I was denying anymore. Jake was at Cole's house when I arrived, his car parked crookedly along the curb. I stepped inside and heard their voices coming from the kitchen. "You cannot keep doing this," Jake said. "Doing what?" Cole asked. "Pretending you do not care. You liked Ethan before he ever moved in here." I stopped with my hand still on the front door. Every thought in my head went silent. Cole answered quietly, "That does not matter." Of course it matters. That was the whole reason I suggested this. My stomach dropped. Jake continued before I could make myself move. "You noticed him every time you came to our apartment. You remembered his coffee, his schedule, even that stupid yellow umbrella. It is not stupid. Under any other circumstances, I might have smiled. I did not. You needed an excuse to actually talk to him," Jake said. "So I gave you one." Cole's voice hardened. "No. You created a ridiculous situation and embarrassed him. I told you from the beginning I would not agree unless Ethan chose to come here himself. And he did. Because his apartment needed repairs. Not because he knew how I felt." I pushed the door closed harder than necessary. Both men went silent. I walked into the kitchen. Jake looked like someone had just unplugged him. Cole slowly stood. "Ethan, how long?" I asked. "How long have you known?" "Known what?" "Do not do that. How long have you wanted me here?" Jake immediately stood. "I should probably leave. That is the smartest thing you have said in 3 months." He disappeared toward the front door. Cole waited until it closed. "I noticed you before you moved in." "Noticed me?" "Yes." And Jake knew. He guessed. I laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. Suddenly the coffee, the prepared bedroom, the charger, the way Cole remembered details about me all looked different. So this whole thing was a setup. No, I just heard Jake say it was. Jake suggested the arrangement because he knew I liked you. I refused the version where you owed me anything. I offered you a room because you needed one. And you never thought I deserved to know the rest? Cole looked down for a moment. "I thought telling you would make you feel pressured. So you decided for me." That landed. He looked back at me. "You are right." I had expected him to argue. Somehow his agreement made the anger harder to hold and the hurt harder to ignore. "Was any of this real?" I asked. Cole stepped closer, then stopped himself. "All of it. The coffee. Real. The grocery trips. Real. The dinner. Real. That night in the kitchen." His expression softened painfully. "Especially that." "Then why did you stop?" "Because you were living under my roof, and I already knew something you did not. I did not want your gratitude or your circumstances to become confused with choice. My throat tightened. It was the most Cole answer imaginable, careful and infuriating at the same time. You should have trusted me enough to decide that. I know. I looked around the kitchen where we had laughed over pancakes and argued about cookies. The room still felt like home, which made leaving it feel worse. I need to go. Cole went still. The repairs at Jake's place are not finished. I will stay with a friend. Ethan, you do not have to leave. That is exactly why I do. I went upstairs and packed one suitcase. Cole did not follow me. When I came back down, he was standing beside the front door. His face was calm, but his hands were tightly clasped. I am sorry, he said. I wanted him to ask me to stay. I hated that part of myself most. Instead, he opened the door and gave me the choice again. So I walked through it. The first morning away from Cole's house, I woke up reaching for a coffee mug that was not there. I was staying on my coworker Marcus's pull-out couch, surrounded by moving boxes because he and his girlfriend were preparing to move across town. Marcus offered coffee, but he drank a dark roast that tasted like regret, and I smiled while pretending it was fine. That became my routine for the next 9 days. I went to work. I answered emails. I ate lunch. I told everyone I was fine. Then evening came, and some ordinary thing reminded me of Cole. A man at the grocery store bought blueberry pancake mix. Someone walked past wearing a navy hoodie. A yellow umbrella appeared in a store window, and I stood there long enough to feel ridiculous. Cole did not call. He did not appear at my office. He did not send dramatic messages asking me to return. That should have made everything easier. Instead, his silence felt exactly like what it was, respect for the boundary I had created. On the 10th evening, Jake showed up outside my office carrying 2 coffees. Peace offering, he said. Unless you want to throw it away. Coffee is innocent. I accepted the cup and started walking toward the parking lot. Jake followed. I owe you an apology. Yes. I thought I was helping. You thought exchanging your gay roommate with your older brother was matchmaking. When you say it like that, it sounds bad. There is no good way to say it. Jake sighed. Cole did not need a housekeeper, Ethan. He needed a reason to believe you might stay long enough to know him. I stopped beside my car. Then he should have asked me. Jake nodded. Yeah, he should have. There was no defense, no joke. That helped more than I expected. How is he? I asked before pride could stop me. Jake smiled faintly. Terrible. Jake. Fine. Functional. He works, eats, sleeps. The house is spotless, which is deeply unsettling. I looked away. Has he said anything? Not much. I went over Sunday. Your room is exactly the same. Something tightened in my chest. Why? I asked him that. Jake took a sip of coffee. He said it was not his room to change yet. I drove back to Marcus's apartment with those words following me. 2 days later, a message finally appeared on my phone. It was from Cole. No apology repeated for the 100th time. No request. Just one sentence. The repairs at Jake's apartment should be finished Friday. Your boxes are safe here whenever you want them. I read it 3 times. Friday arrived exactly 3 months after the ridiculous arrangement had begun. Jake's apartment was repaired, freshly painted, and finally dry. I should have felt relieved. Instead, when I carried my suitcase back into my old bedroom, everything seemed slightly too small. My commute was 45 minutes again. Jake left dishes beside the sink again. The ceiling no longer leaked, but I found myself missing a house that had never technically belonged to me. That night, I opened my suitcase and discovered Cole's navy hoodie folded beneath my shirts. I sat on the edge of my bed holding it, remembering coffee at sunrise, grocery store arguments, movie nights, and the careful distance Cole had created when he thought I had chosen someone else. I finally understood that I had spent days asking whether our beginning had been honest when the better question was whether everything afterward had been. My phone rang. Jake's name appeared. What? I answered. Before you yell at me, I am only delivering information. That sentence worries me. Cole is at home, alone, and your 3 months officially ended today. I closed my eyes. So, Jake was quiet for once. So nothing. That is the point. There is no deal anymore. After we hung up, I looked at the hoodie in my hands and understood what had changed. For 3 months, circumstance had always given me an excuse to stay. Now there was no broken apartment, no arrangement, and no obligation left between us. If I went back to Cole's house tonight, there would be only one reason. For the first time, that reason would belong entirely to me. I drove to Cole's house wearing his navy hoodie and carrying absolutely nothing else, because bringing a suitcase would have felt like making a decision before I had actually said the words. His porch light was on when I pulled into the driveway. For 3 months, that light had meant I was almost home. Tonight, I sat behind the steering wheel for nearly 5 minutes before finally walking to the front door. I had a key in my pocket, but I knocked. That mattered somehow. Cole opened the door wearing an old gray sweatshirt and the most surprised expression I had ever seen on his face. His eyes dropped briefly to the hoodie, then returned to mine. "Ethan, you keep saying my name like I am about to cause trouble. You usually are." I smiled despite the nervous weight in my chest. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Cole stepped aside. "Do you want to come in?" There it was again. A question. A choice. Yes. The house looked exactly the same, but without my shoes by the door and my ridiculous yellow umbrella beside his black one, it felt strangely unfinished. Cole remained near the entryway. "Did you come for your boxes?" "No, okay. I came because the deal is over." His expression became guarded. "I know. Jake cannot trade me to you anymore. He never could. I know that now." I took a breath. "And I was never yours to be given away." Cole nodded slowly. "You were not. But that does not mean I cannot choose you." For once, Cole Bennett had absolutely nothing to say. I almost laughed. This would be a good time to respond. He looked at me as if he was afraid one wrong word might send me back through the door. "I do not want you to choose me because you miss living here. I hated your organized grocery lists. You complained about them constantly. I also hated that you put everything in labeled containers. You labeled the spice rack alphabetically. That was different." His mouth finally curved into a smile. I stepped closer. "I missed you, Cole. Not the guest room. Not the short commute. You." The smile disappeared, replaced by something softer. "I missed you too." "Good. Now ask me properly." He blinked. "Ask you what?" "Anything. Dinner. Coffee. A date. You have spent 3 months trying so hard not to make decisions for me that you forgot you are allowed to ask." Cole considered that, then straightened with exaggerated seriousness. "Ethan Miller, would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night?" "That depends." His face fell slightly. "On what? Are you going to use one of those organized grocery lists?" He laughed, and the sound released the last of the tension between us. "Probably." "Then yes." "Just dinner?" I asked. "Just dinner," Cole said. "No deal. No deadline. No brother negotiating for me. If you enjoy it, I will ask you again. And if I keep saying yes, then I will keep asking." I reached for his hand. Cole looked down at our joined fingers before meeting my eyes again. This time, neither of us stepped away. Months later, my yellow umbrella was permanently back beside his black one, and the guest room had become an office because I no longer needed it. One Saturday morning, someone knocked on the front door. Jake stood outside holding an enormous laundry bag. "Since you two are officially together now, I have been thinking about the original arrangement." I immediately began closing the door. "Wait," Jake protested. "I am still owed 3 months of housework." Cole appeared behind me with 2 mugs of coffee. "No, come on. I created this relationship. Goodbye, Jake." I closed the door while he continued complaining from the porch. Cole handed me my mug, exactly the way I liked it. "You know," I said, "your brother is probably going to take credit for us forever." Cole slipped his free hand into mine. "Let him." I looked around the house that no longer felt borrowed and realized something simple. The strangest arrangement of my life had brought me through that door, but it was never the reason I stayed. This time there was no bargain, no expiration date, and nobody choosing for me. There was only Cole, holding my hand, waiting for my answer. And every day after that, I kept choosing yes.